With some of the best prospects in the minors starting to excel, which one should you be keeping your eyes on? I'm covering that and much more on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and haven't already, hit that little bell below. It subscribes you to the channel and gives you notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, but most importantly, guys, join us on the Subtext platform. On Subtext, it's an in-depth personalized experience through text messaging alerts right to your phone. You get so much more on Subtext than you can in this 30-minute podcast. And if you want the link to our Subtext, you can find it in the bio wherever you're listening or watching, or it's available on any of our social media platforms. And guys, supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to get fast parts quickly. Shop for your next plumbing, HVAC, electrical job that's upcoming, and get the supply super fast shipped from coast to coast at supplyhouse.com. And then dive on into the ultimate fantasy baseball experience with Matt and I. We're giving away one of these awesome Locked On Fantasy Baseball hats that you can see if you're watching on YouTube. You can score big by simply sharing any of our posts on X or Instagram. Each share earns you an entry into the draw. The more you share, the greater your chances are of winning. So don't miss out on this great opportunity. The drawing will be held on June 14th. Get in the game now. And, as I mentioned at the top, some of the best prospects in the minors are starting to perform very well. We might be seeing some of them sooner or later. And then after we talk about some of these top prospects, I have some injured guys that a couple are, returning very soon. You want to get those guys on your IL. We have a great episode, so make sure you lock on for the whole thing. What a better place to start than the best prospect in all of baseball, the young Jackson Holliday. Now, Jackson Holliday broke camp, did not perform very well at all. He started off with a 059 batting average. Yeah, he had that 059 batting average. And once again, I do apologize. He did not break camp. He almost broke camp, but came up about a week after the season started. He did only play 10 games, had 34 at bats, 5 runs, no homers, 1 RBI, no steals. Didn't even attempt to steal. Had 2 walks to 18 strikeouts. This was a really tough start for the young Jackson Holliday. And at 20 years old, it's a lot to ask anyone to come up and dominate in the majors. But down in the minors, 37 games total, 145 at bats, 43 runs. So that's more runs than games played. 11 doubles, 6 homers, 21 RBIs, 4 steals, 40 walks to 39 strikeouts, and a 269 batting average for the young Jackson Holliday. Once again, that's through his first 37 games in AAA this year. Now, there's a reason that Jackson Holliday is number one prospect in all of baseball. His dad, former All-Star, Matt Holliday, has a younger brother coming up through the minor. Not drafted yet, but it's going to come up through the minors soon, and it's going to be very good as well. There's, like I said, it has all that prospect pedigree, has a 70 hit grade, 60 power grade, 60 run grade. Basically, that's on the 40-80 prospect grade scale. He just excels at everything. An overall 70 grade prospect, you don't see that very often. 6 foot, 185, has the pop, has the speed. I think once this kid gets back up to the majors, he hits the ground running, and he's a must add. He's an absolute must add. I guarantee he was dropped in a lot of leagues. If you're fortunate enough to be in first or second in any of your leagues, maybe even third place, and you're just very confident in your roster, and you could afford having a guy like Jackson Holliday on your bench, I think he's an absolute mustache. 45% owned on Yahoo is the young Jackson Holliday. He's down 1% over the last day. I really, really think you should, consider having him on your bench. If you can't afford the spot, so be it. But I think this kid's going to come back up sooner than later and just really take the world by storm. Worst case scenario, he's a September call up, and he gets that cup of coffee, like Corbin Carroll and Gunnar Henderson did a couple years back. So we just keep your ear to the ground here with us on Locked On Fantasy Baseball, and even join us on Subtext, and we'll keep you posted on when we predict some of these guys are going to get called up exactly. And just lock on in. That's such a fun experience there on Subtext. Let's move on to the next guy, somebody who's really, really rocking and rolling that I think is going to be up probably sooner than anybody on this list. It's James Wood. And we've talked about James Wood to almost nauseum at this point on this podcast, but he's just been so good. If you're not familiar with James Wood, outfield prospect for the Washington Nationals, came over in the Juan Soto deal. Pretty much was the key cog in that trade, to be honest. 6'7", 234. Lefty, gets those Aaron Judge comps a lot. 70 grade power. And got some speed on him as well. So far, AAA this year, James Wood is hitting 355 through 45 games, a 1061 OPS, 39 runs, 9 homers, which they have come in bunches of late for James Wood. That power's really starting to show for him in the minors after he got off to a slow start with that. 31 RBIs, 35 walks to 37 strikeouts and 10 steals. Honestly, if I had to redo my prospect list right now, he might be the number one prospect for me. I really, really believe in James Wood. That Nationals team, it can be very fun for fantasy over the next few years with CJ Abrams and, Mackenzie Gore playing decently. They're 24 and 29 on the year. They're better than the Mets, they're better than the Marlins. Honestly, the 4-6 over their last 10. I don't think they're making a push this year, but I think they might want to see what they have when it comes to James Wood. Get this kid out there, let him, let him do his thing there in the big, see if it really translates or not. No reason to keep a guy in AAA that's almost hitting 400, almost more walks than strikeouts. I really think he's a guy that's ready to go. Get him up in the bigs, get him on our fantasy rosters. It's going to be super fun to watch. Hopefully it pans out. I know we've seen a lot of prospects recently that haven't panned out, the Jordan Walkers of the world, and the rest of these guys. That even Wyatt Langford's another one that comes to mind. I know he's just coming back off an injury, but we've been spoiled over the years with some of these Acuñas and Sotos and Tatises, guys that come up and just translate right away. I still think we're going to see a lot of guys that come up and do very well. James Wood is certainly one of them. Let's sneak one more in here before we have to cut to an ad break. But let's talk Junior Caminero, another guy that I think has the potential to come up and translate right away. Not as confident with him as James Wood, but he actually did come up. I believe Junior Caminero came up at the end of last year for 7 games, hit 235, was 8 hits overall, a homer, a double, 7 RBI, 2 walks to 8 strikeouts. So didn't really have too much. We can't really base, I'm really not going to base anything off of that. But Caminero so far this year in the minors, AAA to be specific, is hitting 261 across his 34 games, 138 at-bats, 19 runs, 6 doubles, 8 homers, 24 RBIs, 14 walks to 35 strikeouts with 1 steal. He's not really known too much for his speed, but can steal a bag here and there. But Junior Caminero last year was really, really awesome with his 31 homers, 42 walks to 100 strikeouts, 94 RBIs, 85 runs, and he did hit 324. Now, Junior Caminero is really known for that hit tool. He's a guy that I think could come up and potentially hit, 285, has 70 grade power. As I mentioned, the big power number for him in the minors last year. And he's another guy who's really young at 20 years old. So we all know how Tampa Bay is. And if you don't, they kind of like to slow play their prospects. Took us forever to really see Wander Franco, that guy who we don't really like to talk about too much. But, just kind of throwing his name out there to let you know how Tampa handles their prospect. Not somebody I'm expecting up super, super soon unless there's an injury. Another guy we could see September, help us in our playoff pushes, help us win those championships. So like guys like Junior Caminero and the Jackson Holidays, I'm probably more putting them on my watch list instead of adding them. James Wood is actually somebody I'm definitely adding. James Wood, I'll go out there now and I'll stash him if he's available in any of my leagues, and I think you guys need to do the same. But before I move on and I talk about the Martian and a guy who will be back sooner than later from a suspension, and then we got, as I mentioned to you guys, a few injured players. I do have a quick ad break for you guys. And guys, get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies, and more from anywhere with just a few clicks. Once again, that's at SupplyHouse.com. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch over to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And then once again, Matt and I are introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on the Subtext platform, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. As this season continues to unfold, you can rely on us for dynamic content. Get real-time alerts right to your phone, including waiver wire rankings, instant call-up notifications, injury reactions, and a whole lot more. Stay ahead of your fantasy league by joining the Diamond Club on Subtext, where the path to your victories begins. Subscribe now and elevate your fantasy baseball to a new level. And all right, guys, let's jump back in here, get some more of these names out there for you. And I teased it before. We're going to talk about it now. It's the Martian, Jase Dominguez. And he's somebody that's getting a little bit closer, not too far away at this point. The Martian came up last year and looked really, really good. It was a small stretch. It was 8 games, but he did it 258 with 4 homers. 7 RBIs, had 2 walks to 8 strikeouts, even stole a base as well. So, this is a kid that, really has that strong prospect pedigree. And I really think can take it to a new level. And guess what? He's already played a few games in the minors, actually. It looks like he's played 11 games so far. He's hitting 317. He's got a couple homers under his belt. 12 strikeouts to 5 walks, no steals yet for him. But I think he's a guy, I'm not sure, what the Yankees' exact plan for him is here. I think they, want to let him get his, feet wet under him. And I actually, now that I'm looking into it, I think the Yankees are actually saying that they're not going to rush him back. They really want to let him, do his thing, get those at bats under his belt in, the minors. And because he's still young, the Yankees are in a good spot right now where they don't need a guy like Dominguez to come back up and help them this particular moment. I think if there's an injury or if Dominguez just keeps tearing things up, down in the minors. He could make a case for it. But once again, it's not really something that, they need to force their hand on with Dominguez. And once again, has played some baseball here in 2024 already. So I think we do see Dominguez. I would probably say maybe after the All-Star break, and we just need to keep an eye on him right now. I think on Yahoo he actually is on the IL, unlike the prospects we talked about earlier, where you kind of have to stash them in an NA spot if you're fortunate enough to have that. Otherwise those, like, the Camaro's and the Holidays would just be eating up roster spots. Dominguez can get stashed right on your IL. He's 29% owned on Yahoo. Probably the most addable prospect that we're going to talk about today, in the sense of, he is on the IL. So go out there, get Jason Dominguez on your teams. I think he's going to be very good once he gets to the bigs. Let's move on to our last prospect of the day. It's somebody we actually haven't talked about in a long time. It's Noelvi Marte of the Cincinnati Reds. Did get popped for the PEDs. Was an 80-game suspension for Noelvi Marte. He's actually going. He recently reported to the Reds facility in the Dominican Republic. He's going to play in some exhibition games down there. And I think this is actually a guy, as soon as he's ready and his time is up, as long as he's swinging a good bat, they'll be ready to go. They're currently have played 56 games, the Reds have. So, not that much more. You're talking about 24 more games until Noelvi Marte's back. And he's somebody that has that prospect pedigree. I believe Noelvi Marte is somebody that came over in that Luis Castillo trade, a couple years back, and translated pretty good in his 35 games last year. Noelvi Marte, he had 3 homers, 15 RBI, 6 steals, had 8 walks to 25 strikeouts, hit 316, and was really good for the Reds. Like I mentioned, that prospect pedigree has always hit for good batting average, and the minors always showed off a little bit of power, a little bit of speed. He was actually somebody that was really, really rising up draft boards before, the steroid suspension came out on Noelvi Marte. I know I was getting really, really high on him the more I started to deep dive him. So Noelvi Marte is somebody you need to keep your eyes on. Once he's going to be back, he's somebody in some of those deeper leagues, corner infielder type leagues. He's eligible at 3rd on Yahoo. I'd go out there and get him now. Maybe even next week. You could wait if you really wanted to. But at 10% owned on Yahoo, I actually think that's going to start jumping up over the next couple of weeks. You want to be ahead of the game on a guy like this that has the power, that has the speed, that has the batting average tools, because we don't see that very often. Let's do one injured guy, before I hit you guys with one more ad. Let's talk some Gavin Williams, right? Gavin Williams is somebody who has been injured, has had a couple of little setbacks, but it seems like Gavin Williams is actually ready to start his rehab assignment on Wednesday. So as you guys are listening to this, we already might have some Gavin Williams stats. Hopefully it's only maybe 2 or 3 rehab assignments, maybe even 4 on the long end here for Gavin Williams, because he was starting to get stretched out. He was up to 50 pitches as recent as a couple of weeks ago, had some discomfort, has started to build back up, and is looking better. Let's talk about how good Gavin Williams actually is. When he got called up last year, really, really showed out. He had 16 starts last year. Gavin Williams had a 3.29 ERA, 82 innings, 81 strikeouts, and a 1.25 WHIP. Had 37 walks throughout those innings in the bigs last year. But this is a guy who comes with major, major prospect pedigree. 60 innings in the minors in 2023, had 81 strikeouts, a 2.39 ERA, sub 1 WHIP. And then in 2022, across two levels, Gavin Williams had 25 starts with 1.96 ERA, 115 whip, 149 strikeouts with a sub 1 whip as well, and just has the stuff to really excel in the bigs. We know the Guardians are very, very good when it comes to sorry there, folks. Had a little bit of a technical difficulty there, but once again, Gavin Williams here is 47% owned on Yahoo, going to be back sooner than later. I know there's been an abundance of starting pitching this year, but I think Gavin Williams is somebody that if your team is a little bit lacking in starting pitching, or you just want that extra boost or hold it against somebody or a trade piece at 47% owned, he's a starting pitcher that can be back sooner than later, can help your fantasy teams. Or as a said, you can even use him as a trade piece. Hold him, against your opponents. He's somebody you really don't want to be used against you. Let's move on to a veteran. Let's talk some Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw is just one of the best pitchers in baseball when he's healthy. And I feel like this year the injury out of the way. We all know when it comes to Clayton Kershaw, it's a back, it's something. He's not somebody who's going to give you a lot of innings, but the innings he does give you are going to be very, very quality. Clayton Kershaw surprisingly only 34% owned. He's somebody at that I think we'll see right after the All-Star break. He should be back. And, as I said, I know he's getting older, but he's so reliable in a day and age where, pitchers have been getting hurt a lot. He's somebody I think we're going to be able to rely on when it comes to the playoff time. I think even if he gives you maybe 100 innings down the stretch. Last year, Kershaw pitched 131 innings at 24 starts, 2.46 ERA, 137 strikeouts, and a 106 whip. I expect very similar numbers, a low 3s ERA. The whip is going to be very good. He could still strike guys out. The stuff was still, very, very good last year for Kershaw. Somebody that just you don't need to worry about him. He will get the job done while he's out there. I don't really have too much else to say about a guy that's going to be, a first ballot Hall of Famer. So Clayton Kershaw is actually one of my favorite ads right now. It's actually shocking that he's still as lowly owned as he is. Let's move on to another, ace, Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom is another guy that I think people are forgetting that he's going to be back, once again, probably sometime after the All-Star break. Another guy that's been around a really long time. deGrom's 50% owned on Yahoo. I think he has something to prove. I think deGrom has to come out and prove himself why, Texas gave him this big contract and really at least, give some worth here. He's the kind of guy, he's a workhorse. He wants to get back as soon as possible and help his new team win. He only threw 30 innings before he went down in 2023, but they were 30 dominant innings. He had a 2.67 ERA. He had 45 strikeouts over those 30 innings, and it was a 0.75 whip. Anytime that we've seen deGrom over the last, his whole career, pretty much, he's been dominant. I know he hasn't thrown more than, 92 innings since, 2021. He threw 68 in the COVID year. We just haven't seen a lot of deGrom. But once again, when this guy's out there, the proof's in the pudding. Go look at the back of Jacob deGrom's baseball card. He is just one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. Him and Kershaw are my favorite two, hurt guys to add at the moment that we're talking about on this episode. Let's move on to a closer. I got a closer for you guys, and it's a really, really good one. It's Devin Williams, who was the best closer in, arguably the best closer in all of baseball last year. Devin Williams sitting at 59% owned on Yahoo. I actually saw Devin Williams was available in one of my leagues the other day. I made the room. I'll tell you that much. I made the room. I know closing has been a lot better this year than it has been in past years. So you might not necessarily need a guy like Devin Williams. But as I was saying earlier about, Gavin Williams, he just a guy you don't want to be used against you. Devin Williams is, at least last time I was checking up on him, he was progressing. He was originally only projected to miss 3 months. So if we're still basing it off that timetable, I honestly think we can see him back, maybe a month from now. And I think if you can go out there and pick up a guy like Devin Williams and throw him into your closing rotation, it could be a situation where he's just the icing on the cake. If you got the Emmanuel Classes, the Josh Haders, the big names like that, and then you just throw a Devin Williams in the back of your bullpen too. I really, really think you guys need to go out there and invest in him. And then Milwaukee's just been really good. Milwaukee's 31-23 on the season. So he's going to go out there and save games on a really good team that's competitive. There's no reason not to have Devin Williams on your team. But guys, real quick, I'm actually running super late on this one. I do apologize. I do have to hit you guys with one more ad break. And it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And I talked to you guys yesterday, about those Timberwolves. They did win a game. I was talking about how I did like them to make it to the, finals. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think it's going to be the Mavericks and Celtics, but I think the Celtics just might sneak it out and throw another championship on that beautiful resume that those Celtics do have. And you're getting great odds on those Celtics at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And then, all right, guys, I do have one, maybe two more names for you guys before we head out. Let's talk a little bit of Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray is, we know who he is at this point in his career. Big strikeouts. ERA is probably going to be elevated. Robbie Ray threw, against hitters over the weekend. Don't see an update on how that actually went. But, another guy going to be back around the All-Star break. Another guy that, if you look at the back of the baseball card, he's helped us in fantasy over the years a lot. Big strikeouts. As I said, elevated ERA. We're probably going to be elevated too, coming back off an injury. Control is one of the last things that comes back, especially with starting pitchers when they're coming back from an injury. And I don't think it's going to be any different with a guy like Robbie Ray. I don't know if I mentioned it. If I did, I'm going to mention it again. 12% owned on Yahoo. So if you missed out on any of the pitchers that we talked about already, Robbie Ray is probably still out there. And you know what? Pitching in a good park in San Francisco, I think, is actually going to be helpful for Robbie Ray. I got a little bit of more time here for you. So I'm just going to throw out a couple of other names that I know that we've talked about a lot, but I like a lot as well. Jeffrey Springs of the Tampa Bay Rays is 15% owned on Yahoo. And actually, bad news on Jeffrey Springs. He's actually going to be shut down. I actually didn't see this. This is new news to me. Somebody that we could still stash, but he actually probably moves back on this list. So I'm going to move on to one other guy who I hope the news isn't as bad for, because I'm coming off the cuff with these last two names for you. I'm going to talk about Drew Rasmussen real quick, who hopefully things are going better for. And actually, I think he's been set back a little bit too, but Drew Rasmussen's 3% owned on Yahoo. So even less owned, just giving you guys options. Rasmussen is somebody who's been very successful, with Tampa in the bigs. So I think him and Springs are guys you can look at, but not rushing out to add them at the moment. They are options. They are guys when they do get back that are going to be very good, in my opinion. But it's just going to be curious case with both of them. It looks like they both have had a little bit of setbacks. So I think we'll ride out mainly with the guys I spoke about earlier. Your Gavin Williams, your Kershaws, your DeGroms, your Williams, and your Rays. And all of those young prospects I gave you earlier, that hopefully will be up on their way sooner than later. But guys, that's all for me today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Also, shout out to our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. But guys, until tomorrow, we'll have Matt back and we'll have some must-add waiver wire players for you. I'll see you then. So peace out, folks.